Hey everyone, someone just asked me a fantastic question on Facebook Messenger and I figured I'd answer it live while I drive. Okay, so the question is, why when you buy Bitcoin on Venmo, does the price that you show as the purchase price, is it higher than what the price shows if you're just in the app? Okay, so first of all, in the long term, it doesn't really matter because you're dealing with, 1% or 2% difference. And so what's way more important is that you actually buy Bitcoin, not whether you saved 1% or 2% or 0.5% or whatever. That being said, I love answering questions, so I'm going to take a stab at this one anyway. All right, so again, first what matters is how much Bitcoin you own, and it's better that you own a lot of Bitcoin. No matter how you buy it, you're going to end up way ahead, as opposed to trying to optimize for your fees and something called spread, S-P-R-E-A-D. But again, I'm going to take a shot at this. Okay, so all cryptocurrency exchanges and all, all stock markets, any exchange or any market that has the buying of selling in any product shows you a single price for that product. So it'll show you the real-time price for Bitcoin, for example. But that real-time price is not actually a one-time price. That is the midpoint between the buyers and the sellers. So for example, let me use an extreme example. Let's assume that the marketplace we're dealing with is eggs. And I show up to the marketplace and I say, hey, I will sell eggs for $2 an egg. And someone shows up at the market and says, well, I'll buy them for $1 an egg. Well, right at that exact moment in time, there's not a clearing price for eggs because they want $2 and I'm only willing to pay $1. But if there was a real-time ticker that was following the price of eggs, it would show the price as $1.50, $1.50. Now, technically, nobody just bought eggs for $1.50, but that's the midpoint. So if you're buying or selling, $1.50 is a good midpoint, because if you're selling, you want $2, and if you're buying, you want $1, but you got to show one number, and that's what people usually show is the midpoint between those numbers. Now, in most marketplaces, especially the stock market, so that gap is called the spread, S-P-R-E-A-D. The spread is the gap between what the sellers want to sell for and what the buyers want to buy for. And the clearing price is what the very most recent transaction actually went down at. Well, normally the spread is quite tight. Like on Bitcoin, typically the spread is a few cents or even $1 or two out of, $65,000. Obviously, a few dollars is a fragment of that. Well, every stock market and cryptocurrency exchange has the ability to charge a spread in addition to whatever fee they charge. They do that for a number of reasons. In the example of Coinbase, if you're using the standard edition of Coinbase, they charge you a 1% spread in addition to the fee of whatever their fee is, and their fees range from, whatever it is. But anyway, they charge you a 1% spread. That spread, in the case of Coinbase, covers the risk they're taking that the transaction doesn't settle. So Coinbase will allow you to buy Bitcoin where it has not yet pulled the money from your bank account, which of course introduces risk, because what happens if you say, hey, I want to buy $10,000 of Bitcoin, and you click buy at a price, and then the price goes down, you could immediately call your bank and say, hey, cancel the transaction, don't give Coinbase the Bitcoin. And in that scenario, you could sort of game the system. So the way Coinbase makes up for that is they charge a 1% spread, because the price is probably not going to move by more than 1% in the amount of time it takes between when you execute the trade and when you call your bank and cancel the trade. So it helps to make up for that. Now, some services like Venmo have a quite large spread, as high as like 2%, which is, in my opinion, ridiculously high. Now, for an asset that you're looking to increase in value by, 1,000%, does 2% really matter? Not really. If you're already comfortable with Venmo, if you're already comfortable with Cash App or Strike or Coinbase, the standard edition, it's fine. It just doesn't make that much difference, but it is worth considering. So here is the question of how you figure out what the spread is. Well, first of all, most exchanges charge a spread, and they charge some sort of a fee, which is a percentage of the transaction. So the spread is, let's say it's charging let's say it's Venmo and they're charging a 1% spread and a 0.5% fee. What that means is when you go to buy Bitcoin, the price that you will see as your buy price will be 1% higher than the price you saw when it was just real-time updating. If you go to sell Bitcoin, the price you will see is 1% lower than the price you saw. So again, that's called a 1% spread. It means that the price will be 1% higher or lower than the price you saw. And if it's a 2% spread, the same sort of thing. And again, that applies for all platforms. I think Strike, S-T-R-I-K-E, I don't think Strike charges a spread at all. They just charge fees, and I'm not sure if the combination of their fees plus their spread, or plus not having a spread, I'm not sure if that's higher or lower than the platforms that charge a spread, but but have lower fees. I don't know. Okay, so pretty much all the platforms charge a spread except Coinbase Advanced. Now, you're probably thinking, wait, if Coinbase Advanced does not charge a spread, why would I not just use Coinbase Advanced for everything? Well, the answer is because it's more technologically difficult, and the probability that you are going to mess it up or that I'm going to mess it up is higher. So in Coinbase Advanced, they do not charge a spread, but in exchange for doing that, you are interacting directly with the order book, which means you are actually trading real time with the actual buyers and sellers on Coinbase, which is not a problem. It just, the caveat there is, in order to use Coinbase Advanced, the money that you want to use to buy the Bitcoin has to already be on Coinbase. So you can't do like on Coinbase Standard, you can make a purchase and it's 2 clicks and it does it all for you, and it pulls the money from your bank account and it does it all for you. With Coinbase Advanced, it does not work that way. You have to go in, and it's complicated. It says, okay, what kind of order do you want? Do you want a limit order? Do you want a limit stop order? Do you want a market order? So if you wanted to buy, Bitcoin with Coinbase Advanced, you got to go in the settings and change it to advanced mode, which is more complicated. Then you have to select that you want to do a market order, which a market order is when you're interacting directly with the order book. And in a market order, they do not, actually, I don't think they charge you a spread in any of the types of orders, but in this case, the only one that's relevant for what you would normally want to do is a market order. So you have to go into Coinbase Advanced. So the first complexity is you got to switch it over to Coinbase Advanced. Then you've got to go tell it you want to do a market order. So now there's 2 different things you can screw up: Coinbase Advanced versus Standard, a market order versus some other type of order. Then in the market order, when you try to do a purchase, it's going to tell you you have insufficient funds unless you have the cash already moved onto Coinbase. So, which means you then have to pull the funds onto Coinbase before you do the order. Now, the problem is that gives you a third thing that you can screw up, which is people frequently will click add funds. They will add the funds to Coinbase, but then they will forget to use the funds to buy Bitcoin. So, this happens, right? People come back a year or 2 later and they're like, wow, I can't wait to see how much my Bitcoin is, appreciated. And they're sitting there staring at it and they're like, wait a second, it didn't appreciate because I never actually bought the Bitcoin. All I did was I pulled the US dollars I was going to use to buy the Bitcoin onto the platform. So it's a 2-step process. You got to move the money to Coinbase, and then you have to use Coinbase Advanced to buy Bitcoin with a market order where you are directly interacting with the order book. So when you are doing that, you have significantly lowered the risk for Coinbase because there's no chargeback risk. The money is already on the Coinbase platform, which means there's no way for you to, basically take it back or do a chargeback or tell your bank to freeze the funds and not send them. So because you have de-risked the deal for Coinbase, they do not charge you that 1% spread. But again, it's more complicated. You have to put the funds on Coinbase before you make the market order, which again, it's not super complicated, but it's extra steps, and every extra step is an opportunity to do something wrong. But in that case, you can avoid a spread. Okay, so what's the summary of all this? One, it really doesn't matter in the long term because the spreads or fees you're paying end up being such a small percentage of the total that it's probably just not relevant, which is why I've never talked about it before, because it just kind of doesn't matter in the grand scheme. And secondly, because the only way to eliminate the spreads introduces risk that you or I are going to screw something up, or that we're going to move funds to Coinbase but forget to actually buy the Bitcoin with it, or that we're going to get in Coinbase Advanced, realize it's more complicated, and freak out and say, hey, maybe this whole Bitcoin thing is just too complicated for me. So because I did not want people to, I did not want to introduce that level of complexity unnecessarily, and because in the long term, if you have an asset that's up hundreds of percent, it just doesn't matter that you spent 2% more to buy it. It's just not relevant. But anyway, since someone asked, I figured I'd cover it. Okay, so what can you do about it? Well, the number one thing you can do is use a platform that gives you, better prices, just period. So in Coinbase, if you don't want to mess with Coinbase Advanced, you can eliminate the 1% spread by being a Coinbase One member, which costs $29 a month. So if you're willing to pay $29 a month, you don't have to worry about the spread. You can use the super simple Coinbase standard interface. You can buy it the exact way you always have on Coinbase. There's no spread. The 1% spread goes away, and you don't have to worry about it. In fact, when I was back before I knew about Coinbase Advanced, when I was using my charitable giving funds to buy Bitcoin, which then I will give away charitably. If you use charitable giving funds to buy Bitcoin from a 501c3 foundation, that means 100% of those funds, including the appreciation, has to be used for future charitable giving, which mine will be. But anyway, in that case, I went in there and I was about to buy Bitcoin, and it showed me that the fee was going to be $3,600, something like that. It was over $3,000. But if I switched to Coinbase One for $29 a month, I could literally pay the Coinbase One fee for 10 years before I was, in a worse position. So I signed up for Coinbase One. I made the entire conversion. And then after a few months, when it was clear that I, had bought all the Bitcoin I was going to buy on that vehicle, I just unsubscribed from Coinbase One. So if you want a really simple way of not paying a spread, just sign up for Coinbase One on Coinbase and it goes away. If you want to do it the cheap, complicated way, you can try to figure out Coinbase Advanced. And if there's enough demand, I will do a video exactly about how to do it, and I'll walk you through exactly how to use Coinbase Advanced. But again, I've been reluctant to do that because I feel like it's just, I feel like it's just going to mess people up. I feel like they're going to think it's too complicated. I feel like they're going to just, but anyway, if there's demand, if y'all want me to do a video about how exactly to get the absolute lowest conceivable fees on Coinbase, or the lowest fees period on any platform, I will do a video about that, but I just didn't want to do it unless there's demand for it, because I understand it results in potential complications and people saying, wow, Bitcoin's more complicated than I thought, et cetera, et cetera. So number one recommendation, the easiest way to eliminate the spread and to get the cheapest fees is to sign up for Coinbase One for $29. I guess the easiest way is Coinbase One. The cheapest way to buy Bitcoin without paying $29 a month or a spread is to use Coinbase Advanced, which again is not that complicated, but it is absolutely more complicated than just, point and click, which it is that easy otherwise. And the other option is just use platforms that don't charge that much for fees anyway. So for example, Venmo is probably the highest fees of any major platform. I don't know that for sure, but I think Venmo, which I believe is owned by PayPal, I believe Venmo and PayPal have the highest fees, as I've just been playing around in their interface. And what I usually do is I'll go look at the price of Bitcoin in the app, then I'll screenshot it, then I'll flip over and pretend I'm about to buy, and then I'll go compare the price they're giving me as the buy price as compared to the screenshot I took a few seconds ago on their main page. And then I'll run a quick calculation, divide one number by the other number minus one, to tell you what percent difference the two numbers are. And typically it'll come back and it'll say, 2% difference or 1.5% difference, or, one price is, 1% higher or 2% higher or 0.5% higher than the other price. So, but I believe Venmo and PayPal probably have the highest fees. The next cheapest is probably Cash App. Although I really probably prefer, if you're not going to use Coinbase, I would use Cash App. I think you can get a little bit cheaper fees on Strike, Strike, but on Strike you don't have, the BitKey hardware wallet that you have, that's made by Cash App. And Strike is a much smaller company. It's not publicly traded. It's very reputable, but it's just, again, I like to recommend sort of very reputable, publicly traded, super scrutinized, insanely audited companies. And certainly the Coinbase is the gold standard of insanely audited, extremely reputable, publicly traded, etc. The other would be Square/Block, which is the company behind Cash App. They are also extremely reputable, publicly traded, extremely audited, all of that. So on my food chain of options, if somebody just said, hey, what platform should I do? I would say, well, obviously Coinbase, which is why I talk about Coinbase so much, because it gives you the option of Coinbase Standard and Coinbase Advanced. If you want the extra complexity to try to save some money, you do have the option of Coinbase Advanced, even though I'm not saying I recommend it. I'm just saying it's there if you want to go try to figure it out. If somebody said, hey, I don't want Coinbase, what's the next best option? I would say Cash App. Cash App it's not quite as cheap for fees or spread as Coinbase, but it's extremely reputable company, and they're quite reasonable as far as their purchase prices on Bitcoin and fees and spread and all that. And if somebody said, okay, I don't want to use either of those, I would say maybe look at Strike, STRIKE. But again, it's just not publicly traded, unlike Venmo, PayPal. Those are just huge companies. And obviously, I just have more faith in huge companies that, nothing will go wrong. So maybe I'd put Strike in there as number 3 behind Coinbase and Cash App. And then for number 4 and 5, I'd put Venmo and PayPal. And again, the only reason I would put Venmo and PayPal down at number 4 and 5 is just because their spreads and their fees are just higher than all of the others. Now, once again, I've said this 2 or 3 times already, and I'll say it again, it really does not matter in the long term, because when you're looking at an asset that you're hoping, is going to go up 200, 300, 400%, being all nitpicky about 1% difference in fees on the front end, it just really does not matter. But that being said, if it gives you heartburn because you think, dang, I really want that extra 1% more Bitcoin, and I'm willing to do the extra work to get it, it's like, okay, well, if you're already on PayPal or if you're already on Venmo, the number one thing you need to do is buy Bitcoin. So if you're already comfortable with those platforms, you're way better off just buying on a platform you're already comfortable with, because you're way more likely to actually do it. You're more likely to check it. You're more likely to be aware of it. So it's probably just better to use whatever platform you're already comfortable with. But if you check the fees, again, by comparing the real-time price as compared to the price they're offering you when you make a purchase, if you look at those and they give you heartburn and you think, hey, that's 1% higher than it ought to be, or I'd rather pay 1% or 0.5% rather than 1.5% or 2%. Well, then, in the case of Venmo or PayPal, I would say, well, then your best bet is Coinbase. And if you'd rather use a consumer financial app rather than Coinbase, well, then your best bet is Cash App, which is owned by Square/Block. So anyway, hopefully that's helpful. I did this video specifically because someone asked me that question. Otherwise, I figured this whole topic was probably sort of dragging into the dialogue. But since somebody asked me, I thought, well, maybe somebody else has the same question, and maybe it's worth, So hopefully it's worth introducing that. Sorry, my internet is having issues. Okay. So hopefully it's worth introducing that extra complexity in order to, give you all a heads up of how these things work. And again, would love your feedback of whether you thought this video was helpful or just added unnecessary complexity and uncertainty, which is why I haven't done a video like this so far. So would love your feedback. And if you have additional questions, or if you want me to do a video about how exactly to do Coinbase Advanced, I'm happy to do a video about how exactly to do Coinbase Advanced if there's demand for that. So if there is, just let me know. Hope it helps.